We've all seen those awful images, haven't we? The Los Angeles wildfires, devastating. Reports saying, what, 28 people dead?
Yeah.
And the damage, hundreds of billions, they're saying.
It's staggering. And what really jumped out from the immediate aftermath, beyond the tragedy itself, were those reports. Claims that firefighters just couldn't get enough water. Dry hydrants, empty reservoirs. It's a real nightmare scenario.
Exactly. And that specific reported failure, that sense of a system breaking down, seems to be the catalyst for this really forceful piece of policy we're looking at today.
It is. We're diving into Executive Order 14181. It was signed back in January 2025.
Right. And it seems to have, well, two main goals. One is immediate, like emergency water for Southern California.
Yes, very immediate. And the other is much broader, aiming to change how the federal government deals with disaster response nationally, especially, when they think a state isn't managing things properly.
Okay, so that's our mission for this deep dive then, to kind of unpack this, get past the legal references, the citations, and figure out what it actually means. For water, yeah, but also for the environment, disaster relief. And this whole idea of the federal government basically stepping in and saying, your state policies are harmful, we're overriding them.
That's the core tension, and it's right there in the text.
Let's jump into Section 1 then, because, wow, the language right off the bat. It says, providing water to Southern California is a national interest, notwithstanding actively harmful state or local policies. Actively harmful. That's strong wording.
It's incredibly direct. There's no ambiguity there. It's fascinating because it's not just saying there was a problem. It's explicitly linking the catastrophe, the inability to fight those fires effectively, to what it calls poor policy choices at the state level about water.
So the federal argument is essentially, this wasn't just bad luck, it was bad management, and we, the federal government, need to step in fast to guarantee water access and prevent this again.
Precisely. It's framed as a federal intervention to cut through perceived red tape.
Yeah, I mean, for anyone listening, if your house is on fire, you just want the hydrant to work, right?
Right.
You want the water there.
Of course.
So this federal action is positioned as sort of the ultimate fail-safe, removing those roadblocks as they see them.
And Section 2 really details how they plan to bulldoze those roadblocks. It outlines some very aggressive operational changes to water management.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting then. This overriding of state procedures. How exactly do they plan to do that? Because that's a huge step, managing state water.
It is. First, there's this rapid mobilization order. Secretaries of Defense, Attorney General, Homeland Security, Commerce, Interior, Agriculture, basically everyone relevant.
Pretty much the whole cabinet.
Almost. They have 15 days to report back on all authorities they have, including emergency ones, to make sure water resources are available. It's like flipping a switch on federal emergency power.
15 days. Okay, and what about the actual water systems, like the Central Valley Project? That's huge for California.
That's the main target. The Secretary of the Interior, working through the Bureau of Reclamation, is ordered point blank. Use your discretion to maximize water delivery and hydropower from the CVP. And here's the kicker. Notwithstanding any contrary state or local laws.
Wow. So ignore state rules if they get in the way of pushing more water through.
That's exactly what it says. And it goes further. The Bureau of Reclamation is told to actively ensure that state agencies, and it specifically names the California Department of Water Resources, do not interfere with maximizing water deliveries.
Interference. So if California has a rule about, say, minimum flows for fish or reservoir levels for flood control, this order says push water delivery above those concerns.
That seems to be the implication, yes. Maximize delivery is the mandate. And it's not just operational, it's a regulatory too. Interior and Commerce are told to override activities that unduly burden water delivery efforts.
Define unduly burden. I mean, that sounds subjective.
Well, the order gives a broad definition. Anything that unnecessarily obstructs, delays, or imposes significant costs on getting that water where they say it needs to go.
Okay. This inevitably leads to the environment, doesn't it? The Endangered Species Act, the ESA. What does the order say about that? Because CVP operations are heavily tied to it.
They are, and the EO tackles it head-on. It mandates expediting actions related to ESA exemptions for the CVP's long-term operation. It wants a fast review and revision of ESA rules to align with, quote, the plain meaning of the statute.
Expediting exemptions. That sounds like potentially weakening environmental protections in the name of water delivery speed.
That's the inherent conflict, isn't it? The immediate need for water security, especially for fighting fires, clashing directly with laws designed for long-term ecological protection. The order essentially treats those environmental regulations as obstacles to be cleared quickly.
So you potentially bypass rules meant to protect fish or habitats, rules that took years, maybe decades to develop just to speed up water flow now. What are the potential long-term costs of doing that?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Or maybe billion-dollar, given the scale. You address the immediate crisis, which is absolutely necessary, but you might be setting a precedent or causing ecological damage impacting fisheries, wetlands, species that could take generations to undo, if it's even possible. It's a major trade-off.
A huge trade-off. And this federal override, this muscle, isn't just about the physical water. Section 3 seems to bring in the money, linking it back to this idea of state mismanagement.
Exactly. It shifts from operations to fiscal accountability.
Yeah.
And the title itself is, well, pointed, Ending the Subsidization of California's Mismanagement.
Yeah, subsidization, mismanagement, this definitely politically charged language.
Yeah.
How does this accountability piece work?
It starts with the OMB, the Office of Management and Budget. They have to review all federal programs that touch on land management, water supply, disaster readiness in California.
Okay, big review.
Yeah.
And
Then, within 30 days, Interior, Agriculture, and Commerce have to report jointly on any state or local policies in California they think are, quote, inconsistent with sound disaster prevention and response. So it's a federal judgment on state policies.
right, and what's the potential consequence if they find California's policies lacking according to their standards?
That's where the teeth are. The OMB has to recommend actions. That could mean finding California non-compliant with existing federal grants it's already received, and maybe more significantly, it involves potentially adding new conditions, new strings to future federal assistance.
So basically, change your policies to match our federal standards, or you might lose out on federal money now or down the road.
That's the leverage, yes. It's significant financial pressure.
Okay, so we have these big picture policy fights, the water overrides, the financial threats. But the EU also gets really specific about immediate disaster relief on the ground, right?
Yeah.
Starting back in Los Angeles, Section 4.
Yes, it pivots to very concrete actions for survivors. HUD and FEMA are ordered to quickly create an integrated federal housing strategy. The goal is faster relief, faster housing options for people who lost their homes in the fires.
Makes sense. People need roofs over their heads. What else for LA?
Debris removal. Huge issue after a fire like that. Defense, FEMA, and the EPA have to come up with and execute a plan. Get this within 5 days to speed up clearing contaminated and general debris. Bulk removal, fast.
5 days for a plan? That's incredibly ambitious.
It is. And Section 4 also zeroes in on how local money was or wasn't spent. It calls out the city of Los Angeles specifically.
Oh, so.
It mentions a $213 million federal preparedness grant allotment the city had, apparently accrued since fiscal year 2021, and states the majority was unused. FEMA's job is now to push for timely use.
Okay, so ensuring federal money gets spent faster.
Yes, but with a very specific instruction attached. The order explicitly states those grants shall not be used to support illegal aliens, and it directs the Attorney General to investigate any potential misuse of those funds.
Wow, okay. That's mixing disaster relief oversight with immigration policy enforcement, right there in the order. Very specific.
Extremely specific. And it underlines the EO's national reach because Section 5 then jumps across the country entirely.
Right, it shifts to North Carolina, dealing with the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. Same approach, different disaster.
Pretty much the same template. The focus there is infrastructure, especially roads, transportation, FEMA, the Small Business Administration. They need to take immediate steps to speed up clearing and rebuilding roadways.
Any specific examples?
Yes, it actually names a closed section of Interstate 40 in North Carolina. And it also includes fixing or rebuilding roads and bridges, even on private property, if it helps access.
So direct federal intervention on local and even private infrastructure, and housing too, presumably.
Yes, same as LA. HUD and FEMA are tasked with an integrated federal housing strategy for Helene survivors too. It's the same playbook.
Yeah.
Rapid, federally directed relief applied to different regions and different types of catastrophes.
This is quite something. The scope is just enormous for one document.
It really is. If you synthesize it all, I mean, this single EO managed to order sweeping federal overrides on state water law and environmental regulations in California. It set up a system to potentially penalize California financially for what it calls mismanagement. And then it deployed these very specific rapid response disaster relief teams and plans for both the California fires and the North Carolina hurricane damage. It's tackling immediate crises and long-term policy fights all at once.
So for you listening, what this really boils down to is a major move, a very specific one, towards the federal government taking the reins on things usually handled at the state level, like water management, like disaster preparedness standards, all justified under this banner of emergency response. The key theme feels like speed, efficiency, getting things done now and cutting through rules that might slow that down.
Right. And it uses those emergency powers to directly address what it sees as critical infrastructure failures. Think about the CVP water, the ESA exemptions. So the challenge, I think, the question it leaves you with is, where do you draw that line? When is it absolutely necessary for the federal government to step in so forcefully, overriding state or local control, especially to save lives or homes immediately?
Yeah.
But then what's the potential cost down the road for managing resources like water sustainably, for protecting environments, for that balance between state and federal power? This EO really forces us to grapple with that tension, the immediate undeniable crisis versus the long-term consequences of the solution.